Hi, my name is Jane Powell. Welcome to Community Connections, brought to you by the Greater Kanawha Valley Foundation. This is a show showcasing community involvement, and today we have a guest that I think you're going to enjoy hearing from, Emily Chittenden-Laird. Emily, we're so happy you're here. Emily, you are the Chief Operating Officer of the 84 Agency.
That's right, I am.
So I want to hear about 84 Agency, and then you and I are going to talk a little bit about storytelling.
Cool.
So first, tell me about 84.
Okay, so 84 Agency is a small communications firm here in Charleston, West Virginia. We're a full-service communication firm, so we do everything from graphic design to video work to campaigns, public relations. So, you know, in any given week we can find ourselves on location somewhere and then in a sort of branding, discovery process with a client. So we do a lot of different things, but I think our niche is actually with nonprofits, social enterprises, and other change-making businesses and entities in the world. So the 84 was established about 6 years ago by Jen Sussman and Carleen McManus, and they met in art school, so there's a real art-forward approach to what we do, and a lot of creativity brought to the table to bring the mission and values of the clients that we work with to life.
You talked about values with your agency. We'll talk about those a little bit later in storytelling, because I think that's really a key word.
Yeah.
But I thought it would be a nice conversation for us to have and to share with others how to tell a story and the importance of good storytelling.
Yeah, sure.
So I guess maybe that's where we start. Your thoughts about the importance of a good story.
Well, Jane, a good story is everything.
Yes, it is.
And that's why we're doing what we do. I think that, you know, we live in this age where we are just inundated by the amount of information that is available to us. You know, it's social media, it's on the news, it's on the radio, and if you think about that overwhelming amount of information and what catches your attention, I guarantee you it's probably a good story. And so it's not just any story, it's like I said, it's a good story. And so if we think about the things that make good stories, it's really that we all have these individual experiences in our lives, and we understand our own perspective and we understand our own lived experience, but to really understand an issue, oftentimes what it takes is a point of connection. Not just a set of talking points, not a bunch of statistics, but a way to really get in it in a way that helps us connect with a point of vulnerability in another human being. And so that point of vulnerability can really be anything, right? It can be struggling to get the bills paid, you know, that week. It can be really worrying about your kid's safety. I mean, there are 1,000 points of vulnerable connection, and I think that any good story creates a thread for a person who's experiencing that story to encounter an issue in a different way because they feel connected to the person who's telling the story.
And I think when we talk about being connected, yes, struggles and sadness always make us feel empathy and pull us into the story. But I know some of my favorite videos or stories that I hear are maybe about the dad learning to braid his daughter's hair so he can get her to school, and so they make me feel good. And so I love that type of story.
Absolutely. I think it's so important that the person who encounters a story feels empowered and hopeful. And so, you know, the point of connection can be a point of humanity, you know, and it can be a range of complex things, right? But really, if you watch the story and you just feel hopeless or sad, you're not compelled to action. So a good story really brings you into a space where you can experience hope in the watching and in participation in the story.
Yep, I totally agree with that. I totally agree with it. And I know in your previous life, before you joined 84 Agency, you ran a nonprofit, and you did that for quite a while. So storytelling was an important aspect of your job. in communicating with staff and with clients and donors. I'm sure you used lots of different points through that work.
Yeah, it was challenging. So the work that I did was with the West Virginia Child Advocacy Network. I was there for over a decade. And the work that we really focused on was providing hope and healing whenever a child made a disclosure of abuse. That's a tough thing to talk about.
Yes,
and
it
it's
is.
something that people frequently, when they hear it, they just sort of shut down. So what we had to learn over time is the thing that you and I were just talking about, that we couldn't leave people in a place where they felt just sad. They had to feel inspired and they had to feel hopeful. And the great thing about the work that we were doing there is that kids are so resilient and they do heal. And so for us, it became very important to tell stories about healing and about the hope that kids have after their experience of abuse, and that they're more than just that experience, they're whole people.
That's right. And there's so much more to their story.
Yes,
Yeah, there's always the
absolutely.
next chapter, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah.
I love that. So that's one of the big things that you learned through that job that you're applying now to what you do, helping others tell their story. I think one of my early storytelling experiences for me personally was I did impromptu speaking in college. And you would draw a topic out of a hat, and you had to make an opening and 3 points and a closing, like immediately. And it taught me very quickly to think in that outline form when I told a story. So I've tried never to forget that. They can be brief, and it all happens fast, but I think it's really important to make those points and to have a little bit of organization to your story.
Yeah, I think when we think about storytelling, there's really a narrative arc to it. And people in journalism certainly are familiar with this, but I think the general public too knows about a hook. So having a really good hook whenever you lead into the story, which is that point of connection that makes you say, you know what, I want to read further than just this first sentence, is so important. And then you get into the story and you know, have a chance to do a little bit of expansive storytelling about a person's lived experience. And then I think at the end of the story there really has to be a call to action or a call to adventure, so that you know what is the thing that's required of me now that I understand this story framework.
That's right. When you talk about the hook, I think sometimes that can be a quote from someone. I think it can be a picture even, because what's the saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I think that can draw you in to a story that you see the photo and you want to learn more about it. So I don't think a story always has to be words.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jane. I think we do a lot of work where we are making sure that the way that we're doing storytelling doesn't diminish a person's fullness of their humanity or their complexity, that it really honors them. It doesn't objectify them, because I think that we're in a time where that is a common experience. You see a person who's experienced an issue, and instead of seeing them as a human, you're seeing them as a label. So we really, in our approach across the board, and especially with photography, are really sensitive about making sure that this is a full human that's pictured here. And I think that the pictures that we love are those pictures that really capture a person's light and their essence.
Oh, absolutely. Right. And so I think when we talk about capturing whole people and telling a story, that this is where values come into play. And we talked about that earlier, but this is a really good time to bring that back up and how important that is.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's a think tank that does a lot of research. They're called the Frameworks Institute, and they have some really interesting studies that they've done about communications coming from people who are trying to make change in the world. And one of the things that they have found in their research is that the majority of people who do that kind of work are not leading with values. They're leading with something else. They're leading with a statistic. But really, whenever we lead with values, it's a point of entry because it's something that connects to sort of our souls and our hearts. And so a lot of the work that we do really encourages all the communications that we put forward to make sure that they lead with values.
Well, and I'm going to tell a better story if I believe in it.
Absolutely.
And it is something that I support and promote, then my story is going to be better.
Absolutely. And, you know, we espouse specific values at 84 Agency. There are things that you and I have already talked about. One is that we really do value complexity, and we don't try to diminish that complexity. We have to tell stories that are quick enough, but we don't want to minimize a person's experience. We don't objectify people. We really try to explore what we refer to as open ground. And it's not a space of the progressive talking points or the conservative talking points, but it's another space, a point where people can connect and not set aside their values, but actually come as full humans and enter into a space where they can encounter an issue in a whole new way.
That's right. So you talked about stories can be brief, which makes me think of social media.
Sure.
How does that play into telling stories?
Yeah, I mean, social media is where people live now, so we can't ignore it. We can't pretend that, you know, the only stories that are worth telling are, you know, long-form stories, because that's not the way that our world is happening. And I think that there's a lot of brilliant, innovative work that gets right to the heart of the matter in very few words. It's pretty fun, in my opinion, to play in that space because it's reaching way more people than we used to be able to reach.
It's telling a story in 140 characters. Well, it's a little few more now, though, isn't it? Right? But
Yeah, on Twitter.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Tell a story in 140 characters.
Yeah.
That's a challenge.
It's a challenge. It's absolutely a challenge, and it's a challenge whenever you really do embrace complexity. But it's doable, and I think that there are examples of people doing an amazing job with that.
So, in terms of telling stories and helping people telling stories, you do workshops about that. And you have one coming up that you're actually doing for the foundation.
Yeah, we're so excited. So May 1st and 2nd, we're doing a workshop here in Charleston, and it's open to nonprofits and folks connected with Greater Canals Network. And we're really excited to help nonprofits really look at their internal capacity to do better storytelling.
And I think that will be important for all the reasons that we've said, that storytelling doesn't have to be hard. It can be simple, and anyone can do it. It's just finding kind of your voice to tell the story.
Absolutely.
So I love that. And I look forward to the classes, and I'll be there. So I think that that's wonderful. I just wanted to touch again that your agency is available to do those types of workshops for other businesses or nonprofits, because I know that's kind of where you come from, and that I'm sure that they can reach out to you at 84agency.com with any questions that they had, and you would gladly consult with them about storytelling and sharing their vision.
Absolutely. We love meeting new clients all the time.
Yeah, so that's wonderful, and I look forward to the workshop that's happening with the foundation and what grows and what great stories that'll actually probably appear right here in the coming months and years. So I think that that's wonderful. I look forward to that. Emily, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Jane.
Thank you. Thank you guys for joining us. This has been Community Connections, brought to you by the Greater Kanawha Valley Foundation. We'll see you next time.